Oh, well, we kind of turn into a phantasm in the infant Great One form that we have looks a bit like a phantasm, but I don't know if that's significant or not.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting because with the theme of parasites going on in the game, like you have the snake parasite in the Forbidden Woods, and that has like parasites on it as well. So it's like a parasite eating parasites. Um, like it's kind of interesting that we become at the end of the game because a phantasm is like, as far as we know, a sort of parasite, but it's a parasite of like a higher order. So it's almost like I don't even know what it's almost like really, but it's kind of interesting that you ascend into something that feeds on something else, and that's in its infant form. But later on, maybe it's not something that feeds on something else. Maybe it's something that is fed on.
What if, right? Because like when we evolve into an infant Great One, we're tiny. Like we're like the size of like a cat or something. Like the doll can pick you up. So I'm wondering if it's maybe something like what happens with the brain sucker, where like the brain sucker has this phantasm growing in it. Maybe like we don't necessarily turn into that thing. We've just like fostered this phantasm in our body, and it's like it's absorbed us and crawled away rather than
Right. Yeah.
yeah. Because it also like there's that weird very rare chalice creature called the I think it's just called hole digger. So what happens with the creature is it's like a four-limbed thing, and it has defined hands and defined feet. So it's not like it's got four of the same kind of limb. It almost looks like it has legs and arms, but it's tipped over forward. And within that body that's all like bloated and sort of stretched out, there is what it's kind of like a phantasm. It's got a lot of like it's like a strange worm with all these tentacles coming out the front of it. And what happens is because the thing is so fat and slow, they can't turn very well. If you run around and start attacking the back of it, rather than turning around the head and like it does have an anus, the head and the anus will retract into the body and then just pop out the opposite hole. So like you'll be fighting its back, and then the back will like squelch back in, and the head will pop out. So it's like the thing inside the creature almost as like a separate organism that's like dragging this body around with it, in the same way that the brain sucker looks like a phantasm inhabiting like a corpse. This is kind of a similar thing. It's like this central red kind of like squid thing is inhabiting this bag of flesh. And the reason I say it's an anus is because it has an attack where it'll grab you and it'll eat you. And when it eats you, like instead of spitting you out again, you go all the way through this like tube in the middle, and it basically like shits you out the other end. It looks kind of like a sea cucumber with really long tentacles, almost, is what's really inside this creature. So I'm wondering if like maybe our Great One form at the end is maybe a similar thing where like we had that thing in us and it just grew and grew and grew, and like maybe stage two of that is something like a brain sucker where you have a thing that's living in your head, and then if it goes even further you have like the body is just a sack of flesh that the phantasm's dragging around, and then maybe like phase three is what we become with the phantasm. It's almost like a cocoon hatching, like our body was a cocoon and this thing just like hatched out of it, which would explain why like our eventual form is so small and it's like a little infant thing. We don't become like a I don't know, like was Rom always a big spider, or did Rom start off as a little spider and then grow? I don't know.